past. When we have had individuals that have come out of the hospital, we have gone there, we have worked with them, we have stayed with them, in many instances overnight to help the family. If they're going back home, if they're staying in their apartments, we will stay with them as well, help them while they're there as well. That will come off of their community support budget. Right, so we will come in there and we will help them if they need help, that additional help. Or if it's a personal care assistant, that will be, sorry about that. Personal care assistant also could potentially be involved, etc. So those things would be still involved with, obviously, if they come home, when they come home.
You talked about a lot of different levels of services. Are these covered under Medicaid? And if not, are there dollars that we would have to put up?
So we're going to structure each plan under your DD budget only.
That is definitely the idea about this, is to use the funding that is there and to, so again, and that's why it's very individual. Some people don't have that big of a budget. They might not need a whole lot of services. Other people will have that more of that tier and that they'll need more services, so they'll need to have that provided. So we're going to really try to work within the person's budget the best we can.
And obviously, as an agency, as part of somebody in the community, we will not, it's not always about the money. Yes, it's obviously a component, but it's not always about the money. Sometimes you really need to, as an agency, take responsibility and help people when they need help. It's not always dollar bills. That's the reality. That's how we treat that's how we've been doing it for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
I'm a support coordinator, I'm also a parent, and I just want to say that there are other sources if you're, you have, obviously everyone has limitations, but sometimes I can find a county grant for somebody to supplement something. You can also request a bump up every few years from DDD if you have an emergency, and they can give you a few $1,000s more to help cover for those things. So there are things financially that can be done to help beyond the DDD budget. Not lots, but there are things. You just have to be creative.
Right, thank you. That's always good to know that there is other sources that if you're needed, that DDD. And I think Abby brought that up when her brother was needing the kidney operation and there was a lot of needs. DDD did step up. So there may be some ways to do that also. Yes?
My question is the actual housing that the people are living in, the actual housing that the people are living in. What do you, like, is this, first of all, is this plan in place now, or this is something that you're working on to make happen? That was the first question I had.
This is a plan we're working on to have it happen.
So where do you foresee the people actually living like in their own apartments, in like together? Like what do you foresee in the sense of their actual home?
This is really where it becomes really individualized. There's lots of different options out there. Courtney Davey is going to speak to a lot of that. So we're going to look to see what makes sense. In some cases, it may be their own apartment. Maybe they'd like to share with another person. So there's no going to be a cookie, what do you call it, cookie cutter things. It's going to be individualized. We're going to look to see what do you see the best for your job, what can work, what's the budget, what's this, where do you want it to go. There's a lot of different aspects, but there's different options.
Thank you.
Yes.
But just to add to that, in terms of helping you locate and find and go and see housing that you want to go and see, that is definitely a role that we can also play. We can leverage the analyst team, social workers, etc., and even the people that are going to be providing the direct care moving forward after housing has been identified. In the instance that it hasn't been identified, we can go and do that housing and go with them and see if this is a good fit for them. What's available out there? What are the landlords offering? What are the towns that you want to live in? There's also all kinds of legwork that you as a caregiver may not necessarily have all that time. So we can dedicate time to do that, to fill that gap, to go see that apartment, that's available, but not be available in a week, right? Or that same day, right? Because it came up on the market and so there's a lot of demand for it. So we can certainly advocate even at that level. Once you're in your housing, if you already have housing, then obviously, again, back to Diana's point, it's very individualized. So it's really what stage you're at is where we would step in. And we want to step in if it's got to be the beginning, which we've done, if it's in the middle, or if it's been going and then whoever you've been working with, it's not been going well with, that's where we also want to help out. Because that's the point, we want to make sure that it's working out. Because you may have had housing, you may have lost the housing, right? Because through no fault of your own, right? Because maybe the agency didn't do a bang-up job, or you didn't pay your rent, or whatever reason that could be. We want to make sure that we identify those things and help you. Make sure that you're able to stay in your housing.
Do you foresee some, like the community worker, I think you could call that person living in a home? Like, let's say a person really can't live in an apartment, they're noisy, they're this, they're that, that's not gonna work out for them, or a group home, but maybe they have someone living with them, they have a roommate, and then the community worker living in the house with them? Do you foresee
Yes.
that kind of?
Absolutely, that's absolutely an option as well, absolutely.
Or just paying, or otherwise, let's say a person lives in a place by themselves, and would you see the budgeting isn't good, is those things like, you're gonna spend time, if it's in his budget, if we can put it in his budget.
Like maneuvering the money, you're asking?
Yeah, well, the person living alone does a lot of things, but also needs help just in certain areas, and also just to be overseen by people who know him. Is that what you would do, even if they're not in an apartment complex kind of thing, in their own home somewhere?
Yes.
Okay. It sounds.
The idea, again, is to look at the individual needs. What is the situation, and what is going to really serve that person? So, yes, it will be matching what is needed and with the budget and all of that. But if the person only needs help in this area, then we're only going to give them help in that area. And if there's more, then we will provide that for them. So it really comes down to what the needs. And, we talked about that we serve all tiers. Well, some of the tiers are very, tier A. There might not be a whole lot of needs, but maybe they need some help in recreation or socialization or budgeting. A lot of times our guys need budgeting, or even just the transportation. So, and then it goes more and more as the tiers get more involved.
Yes.
Have you ever had situations where someone's tier A, tier B, and you're like, wow, this person has a lot more issues than a tier A or B, and then help this individual get their child more support?
Well, that's definitely something with, you need to work with the support coordinator. The support coordinator is the one to advocate with DDD about the budgeting. Now, does that mean that maybe they need a new NJCAT? We could help, provide some of that, because if we're seeing that this is not okay, this person really can't do what some of the things the NJCAT says they can do, we can help do that. But that is very much around with the support coordinator's role to help with the budget, and again, we can support that, give our input, if that would be helpful, any way that we can do that.
But if you're asking, have we seen it? Yes. So we've definitely had work with individuals who have had a certain amount of hours that they're allotted because of their budgets, and it's out of sync to what they really, really need and what we've identified. In those instances, we always start working with the support coordinators. We let the guardians, if there is a guardian involved, if it's just individual, the individual and support coordinator. We've had countless meetings in my office with a multitude of individuals discussing a lot of those needs. A lot of the fact that what they were assessed for is not in line with what they necessarily need. So we have that, yes, we definitely advocate, we definitely work with support coordinators to try to work with DDD to try to get them more budget, more money. If for that individual, it makes sense.
Yes.
So we can work with individuals in the group home, but a lot of times it's really the group home that's providing the service. But certainly there's always some avenues that we work with when somebody's living in a group home.
I know some of the people I work with are dually diagnosed and they have some significant psychiatric issues. Do you work in conjunction with, with different mental health organizations and putting in supports for people that are living in the community?
If the person has a diagnosis of mental illness as well as their DDD diagnosis, we would certainly want to give them the best support as possible. And that's working with psychiatrists, if there is a support group that they need to go to, all of that. That's part of really identification of what does this person need and then how best do we get it. But definitely, a lot of our population is dual diagnosis, and so we do try really hard to address all of those needs, because there are a lot of differences, and sometimes the mental illness is really what's keeping the person from being as independent and as able as many of his other skills can show, but that keeps them back. And we need to keep giving them as much support and guidance and assistance as we possibly can.